Mike Vrabel, according to Teddy Bruschi, needs to go in there and say, you know how you think you're smart? Well, I'm smarter than you. I know more than you, and I'm in charge. The boss is back, baby.
Yeah, I like
the
how
boss is back.
Teddy Bruschi said the collaborative project pretty much is over.
Good.
And I am a firm believer in that. I've said this before. I said it on Patriots postgame. It felt like there were too many chefs in the kitchen. And when you are a leader, when you are the head coach, you need to be making the final decision, period. We're not going to sit there and spend a lot of time and, well, what do you think? And what do you think? What do you think? When you do that, you're wasting time. Part of your responsibility is to be able to make those adjustments, those calls, those decisions quickly, and everyone needs to fall in line and say, whether they agree with it or not, that's the man. He's in charge. We're going to roll with it because that's the position that he's been given.
It was a misevaluation and a misstep by Robert Kraft to say we can just keep everybody here but let Bill Belichick go. And yes, it was a problem that Bill had become too insular. It was a problem that the staff was too small. And in some ways, yes, it was a problem that nobody in the building could challenge Bill on something. But they went too far in the other direction.
Yes.
They went too far. There were too many cooks in the kitchen. And the biggest problem is that nobody knew how to cook the meal. Nobody had ever actually done it before.
Right.
Elliot Wolf, I know a lot of the the beat writers say, well, Elliot Wolf is very well respected in NFL circles. He's an experienced guy. He's never been a primary decision maker before. And he was also a part of, the staff and the personnel department that worked with Bill Belichick to draft horrible players year after year after year. The drafts have not been good enough. The roster has not been good enough. And the attitude that will just cut Bill Belichick out of this thing and everything will get better, that was misplaced and misguided. And nobody, absolutely nobody, who was in the job that they were in last year had done it before. And now you have a situation where you have a new head coach who has done it before. And they desperately needed that.
They needed it big time. Matt, I'm predicting within the next 24 to 48 hours, we will get some more breaking news. They're going to make these moves quick. I'm telling you.
As in you'll find out who the offensive coordinator is and you'll get more clarity on the personnel department. I hope so.
Oh, it's coming. The night last week, a week ago, when they fired Gerard Mayo after 90 minutes after the game, I was like, man, just like everybody else, oh, man, that was extremely, extremely fast. And then you go to the next day, Kraft talks to the media, and I was so mad because no one asked, unless I missed it, hey, why 90 minutes? Why didn't you wait until, maybe today or the next day? 90 minutes. And then we get the report today that Vrabel is the guy. That tells me that they knew Mike Vrabel was the guy. They had to make moves quick. 90 minutes quick? It's still kind of fast for me, but they knew. They knew what was going on. Vrabel knew the whole process of interviewing people. It was all just because they had to do it. They knew who was coming in to be the new head coach of the New England Patriots before even the last week, before the game even started.
This has been apparent for a long time, but the story is they closed the deal.
They closed the deal.
Really, the only question was, were they going to close the deal? Mike Vrabel was their target. He should have been their target. This is the right hire. And what they have been able to do over the last week is convince him that they're the right fit for him. It was obvious. It's been obvious for a long time that Mike Vrabel was the right fit for the Patriots. He's been here, but he's been elsewhere as a coach, which is the most important thing. He has connections around the league. He has built a culture before. He's been a head coach before. The Patriots always should have wanted Mike Vrabel. The story is the Patriots did enough to convince Mike Vrabel that he should want the Patriots. They must have paid him. They must have given him assurances in regards to control around here. That's the story. Your thoughts? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, multi-year. How many years? I need the details. I need to know what it is.
I would assume it's 5 years. Okay. Most of these coaches get 5-year deals. So, and this will not be a one-and-done situation. They will not be blowing him out after next year. We go to you on this. Is Mike Vrabel the right hire? Yes or no? Did the Patriots get this right?
They got it right. They got it right for a lot of the reasons Andrew just said. They don't just need an offensive mastermind. That would be great. And they can still get that guy, as I wrote about. Again, you can read on 985thesportshub.com. This doesn't preclude them from getting a good offensive coach or coaches in the building. But they needed somebody to reset the program. And when I say program, what I'm talking about, and this is going to be a very popular word over the next week or so in this context, the program is What are you doing Monday to Saturday to get ready for Sunday? What are you doing January to July to get ready for August to December? What are you doing January to April to get ready for the draft, right? And the idea is if you have a strong program, and it takes multiple years to build this, they can make steps this year. The stronger your program, the more almost turnkey it becomes. Among all the great things Bill Belichick did, you talk about the program he built in New England. And up until the very end there, it was a machine. They were churning out players. They were churning out coaches. One coach would leave. Boom, somebody else steps up, right? It was just week to week. It's day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. What are the core philosophies, core concepts, core beliefs of your organization from the top down that you use to guide you? I don't even know if I want to say the Patriots had a bad program last year. I don't really know that they had a program at all. It didn't feel like there was any semblance of one. And when you don't have a program, you can, put your right tackle in motion and call all the double reverse wide receiver passes you want. It's not really going to matter because there's no substance. There's no foundation holding it all together. Would Ben Johnson have been a good hire? Yes. But he would not have been the best hire from the candidates available. That's Mike Vrabel. He certainly has his own ifs, but they needed somebody who can come in and establish a program. Mike Vrabel has proven he can do that. He did it in Tennessee, and now the hope is he can do it again here and do it quickly.
Leroy, I know you have an important question you want to ask. I just want to follow up real quick on something Barth just said. You have said for a long time, you're obviously a draft guy. You've said there's no such thing as a perfect draft candidate.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a perfect prospect.
Yeah.
I think the same thing could be said for head coaching candidates. There's
Absolutely.
no such thing as a perfect head coaching candidate.
The reality is if they are that good, they're not available.
Right. So why was Mike Vrabel available? And I would argue that I think Tennessee let him down, not Mike Vrabel let Tennessee down.
Look, you go back to the A.J. Brown trade, which by all reports Vrabel was not a fan of. That kicked off just a really ugly series of events there in Tennessee. People are still losing their jobs based off of it. At the end of the day, when you win 12 games, you go to the AFC Championship, and then 2 to 3 years later, you're under 500. It doesn't really matter the circumstances as the head coach that does fall back on you. And I think his front office put him in a bad situation.
Wow. So in order to create a great program, you got to have a group of people who are, intelligent, creative, tone setters. In your opinion, how soon do they start making changes in the front office and surrounding Mike Vrabel?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing about interviews. We've already kind of heard some of these names thrown out. Josh McDaniels is the big one everybody's heard for offensive coordinator. I know some people have kind of gone back to some of the people Vrabel worked with in Tennessee as ideas. They're going to have to go through the interview process, and after the heat they took with the head coaching search, I wouldn't be surprised if they're a little more thorough here. But I would think we start getting interviews this week, and maybe I don't know how many people they plan on interviewing, but they're going to move quickly. Like Robert Kraft made that clear on Monday that they want to get the pieces in place because the real question here, and I heard you talking about this earlier, Matt, you're absolutely right. This is not the most consequential decision the Patriots will make this offseason. I don't even know that it's the biggest in terms of the make or break of the future of the organization. It's about the roster. They need more talent. Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson, Brian Flores, Bill Belichick, whoever is not going to have success with this roster. So you need the coaches and the front office personnel in place to start evaluating these players, coming up with a plan. So I think they're going to move pretty quick because they got to get to the roster part of this.
So Mike Vrabel being the head coach of the New England Patriots helps that process in what way?
So one, he has an expansive network. I know people have kind of looked at this and said, another retread, another guy who's been here. He's here as a player. His coaching background is almost entirely independent of the Patriots, and this is kind of what I wrote about this morning, looking at all his stops as a player, as a coach. And again, he's done it before. He kind of knows from Tennessee, okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't, and it should allow him to go a little bit quicker because ideally, I don't know for sure, but ideally, it's not going to be a feeling out process. There shouldn't be a learning curve like we talked about Gerard Mayo last year, for better or worse. This is a guy that has never been here. He's going to have to kind of learn on the job. Mike Vrabel's not learning on the job. Mike Vrabel already knows. He's done this before. He knows what he needs to do.
Should Mike Vrabel have personnel control?
I don't know. I need to see who the other candidates are. It's not something I'd be entirely opposed to. You're talking about final say, right?
Right, final say.
Yeah, he should absolutely have a significant input on the personnel. I'd have to see who the other candidates are. I would lean no now. If he brings in a GM and things get going and maybe in a couple years it goes to him, kind of like it did with Bill, I don't think it's a never with him. I think the way he views the game could translate to a GM. But with all the work that needs to be done with this team, I think it would just help to have somebody else. It's a big thing. I don't say it to take it off his plate like it's a minor thing,
Sure.
but having somebody has he ever really negotiated a contract or, negotiated a trade in the draft, things like that. Having somebody who's done that, I think, would be very helpful.
So what you're saying is it's a better situation for Vrabel to bring in his own guy, right? Somebody that he's comfortable with, has worked with before. That is the best situation for the Patriots.
Yeah, or just somebody. I know. I think it's Borgonzi, right? Mike Borgonzi from the Chiefs is a name that's come up. There's
Everett guy, as we've heard.
Everett guy, right? I'm also.
They got Borgonzi.
Ryan Cowden, who's currently with the Giants, was with him for quite a bit in Tennessee. That's a name that's been thrown around. I'm not saying keep it with Elliott Wolf because it will be too much for Mike Vrabel. It should go to somebody else, but that somebody else should not be in the building right now.
Just real quick, because I know we're up against it. You mentioned that the NFL. Let me back up. The show before, you were just doing it, and when you were heading out, I said, how much longer before we hear something? Is Vrabel official or not? And
the team tweeted it, so it's official at this point.
No. But then you said, I don't know. This is before the news came out. You said, I don't know. I don't think the NFL wants them to announce anything during the playoffs, during the actual game. It happens today. How do you think the NFL is feeling, and why would they be so anti making an announcement like this?
I mean, I don't think they want it during a game because it's the game, it's their product. That's what they want people focusing on. I think something like this, it's early enough. What was it, 20 minutes after we got off the air, right? 10:19, 10:20. Yep. That's enough lead time for a 1:00 game. Obviously, we know that there was some heat externally about how the Patriots handled the search. Yeah. So I think it would more, be related to that. But at this point, the other thing is this is going to supercharge it now because everybody was waiting on Mike Vrabel, right? He was the number one candidate available, I would say, over Ben Johnson league-wide, just from everything we heard out there in the public. So nobody was going to hire a coach. On the off chance something fell apart between the Patriots and Mike Vrabel, nobody was going to hire a coach until Vrabel got hired. We see this in free agency all the time. So now the league gets to kind of, they'll play the games today, and then this week gets to kickstart the hiring process.
Should they have just hired Vrabel last year? I mean, he was the number one candidate on the board. He probably would have been the number one candidate outside of Bill Belichick last year. I would certainly make that argument. The league doesn't want Bill for a million different reasons. But should they have just done this last year?
So Vrabel was at the top of my list last year. I don't know with the way the contract was with Gerard Mayo if they actually could have.
Well, they had the buyout. They could have paid him to go away.
Yeah, Vrabel would have been the best hire they could have made last year.
What about offensive coordinator?
So
you just wrote a whole piece on 98.5. Leroy, if you want to read a piece with 17 million names,
it's a little dense. It's a little dense.
My
I think
God,
it's 3,200 words.
I scrolled through this at the beginning of a segment being like, I'll be able to reference some of Alex Barth's offensive coordinator candidates. Dude, the amount of bolded names. Downing was replaced by Tim Kelly, Ryan Tannehill, Will Levis at quarterback, Pat O'Hara. Who the hell is it? Charles London, Luke Steckel, Justin.
Luke Steckel is I'm actually kind of excited about Luke Steckel. Luke Steckel's a good name to know, and I explained why in there. I told you, I went through his all I heard all week was not another Patriots guy, not another Belichick guy, and that kind of we posted the clip on the station accounts from earlier this week of me kind of pushing back on that, but I was still getting kind of fed up with it. So I was like, all right, let me show you guys just how many non-Patriots coaches he's connected to. So, no, when it comes, some of that, too, wasn't just...
Ken Dorsey, Deuce Staley, Chad O'Shea, Bill Musgrave. My God, you just name a million guys in this thing. Luke Fickle, Mike Denbrock.
No, okay, so to be clear, not
Nick
some
Cayley,
of these...
Clint Kubiak, T. Martin, Tanner Engstrand. I'm just going through the bolded names in this thing.
These are not all... Let me be clear. These are not all offensive coordinator candidates. Some of these names are referenced for just for reference points. But
this is the Encyclopedia Britannica, Barth.
So,
Jesus.
Okay, let me give you part of the reason this is so expansive. And I think this is the big if when it comes to Mike Vrabel and people talk about this. Who is going to run the offense and what happens if that guy leaves? You want to keep continuity. You don't want another situation like 2022 where Josh McDaniels leaves and you have to have a defensive coach on the offensive side of things. It's not just about hiring the offensive coordinator. Mike Vrabel, and this goes to program building, needs to build a pipeline I don't just want to know who the offensive coordinator is. Who is the guy that if the offensive coordinator gets hired away, there should be like one or two guys that are clear cut next. Maybe you make like a run game coordinator and a pass game coordinator, right, on top of the position coaches. So that's where Luke Steckel comes into me. He's coached multiple positions. He was with Vrabel in Tennessee. This year he was with the Raiders. He was their tight ends coach, Brock Bowers. Hello. He's coached tight ends, coached other positions. You make him like a run game coordinator and your tight ends coach. That's a guy that now has a pipeline that, or a resume that looks like an offensive coordinator, an up-and-coming offensive coordinator. So it's not just about getting the OC to me for Vrabel. It's about building that staff out in full. So, okay, let's say Tommy Rees, who he was with in Cleveland. Tommy Rees is your offensive coordinator. He gets hired as a head coach in 2 years. Boom, seamless, Luke Steckel, promotion. You don't have to deal with too much turnover.
Can you stick around for one more segment?
Yeah.
You got time?
Yeah.
Because we need to get more into the Elliott Wolf situation and the front office. Also, somebody has floated out a defensive coordinator candidate on Twitter that I want to get your thoughts on because it feels informed to me. 617-779-0985. Alex Barth sticking around. Leroy's here. McCarthy and you. The Patriots hire Mike Vrabel. We continue on the Sports Hub. Mike Vrabel is your future. Leroy, McCarthy, Alex Barth is here. Is Mike Vrabel the right coach for Drake May, Alex?
I can't say definitively yes, just because Ben Johnson, like if you were looking at this solely through Drake May and ignoring the rest of the organization, which I think a lot of people were doing, Ben Johnson's the right hire, like the best hire. But Mike Vrabel has a very strong track record of hiring offensive coordinators. LaFleur obviously has done a great job in Chicago. Arthur Smith, I know he had a rough night last night, but has been a pretty good offensive coordinator, all things considered, throughout his career. Tim Kelly's fine, and I'm blanking on the name of the guy he had in Tennessee. He's 3 for 4, basically hiring offensive coordinators. So if he can get the right offensive coordinator with Drake May, then yeah, he's done his job in that regard.
Is McDaniels that guy? You want McDaniels back?
I'm not anti-McDaniels. He's not my favorite choice. I'd kind of like to see them go with somebody, a little more up and coming, try to find their own kind of Ben Johnson, right? Can they find the offense coordinator who in 2 or 3 years will be the big name hire? I look at Tommy Rees would certainly be a guy that qualifies as that. Can they get, could you maybe hold Josh McCown away from Minnesota, giving him an opportunity to work with Drake May again? But, McDaniels, he's reliable. He's steady. And we've seen the big concern with him is what can he do with Drake May? We've seen him with Brady and Mac Jones and this kind of offense. We do have the 1 year with Cam Newton. It's really not a super significant sample size, but he was able to build in a quarterback run game. There needs to be more done with it beyond what they did with Cam Newton. Some of that's personnel. Some of that is they only had so much time to install things that year. It was the COVID season. Cam got here late, all of that. There's been some kind of examples of him going to different colleges. He's at Ohio State. He was at USC. I think there's a few other in taking in practices. How much did he get from that? Has that kind of reshaped his view? So I don't think he's a bad choice. I think there's better choices, but especially if he kind of comes in with a refreshed view on what you can do with a mobile quarterback, then look, we know he's good with quarterbacks. We know he's steady. You know what you're getting. I think it's an offense that, look, to get an offense like the Lions had, right? To just bring that personnel here would have taken a long time. I think with McDaniel's offense, there's still significant moves that need to be made, but I don't know that the grocery list is quite as long, right? To get McDaniel's offense in place, I think would probably be a quicker setup.
Wow. Well, it seems like, and again, I haven't been on social media, but I imagine Patriot Nation is just out there celebrating this move and everything. Okay, I get it, but do you anticipate any issues stemming from the hiring process? Vrabel, again, seems to be the right guy, but there's been a lot of discussion about the process lacking transparency. Yeah,
well, look, Robert Kraft said that they were going to talk to a number of people, and then they end up requesting 5 interviews, making 4. That certainly doesn't square. They kind of just blew through the Rooney Rule, which understandably rubbed people the wrong way. I do think, especially if it does, look, this is a winning cures all thing. If Vrabel's good and they're rolling, I don't think you'll hear too much about the process. If it starts off slow, especially if Ben Johnson goes wherever he goes and has some success, those questions are going to get really, really loud. So it's really on Vrabel to kind of keep that off the table. But I do also think you'll see them be a little more expansive with these subsequent hires, coordinators, front office personnel, things like that, as they should be. I think with the head coach, look, they didn't treat the Rooney Rule the right way, obviously, but it was pretty clear from the beginning, the top team in terms of the coach hiring process. I didn't need them to do what the Jets are doing and talk to 30 guys. They were going to hire one of Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, Brian Flores, or Aaron Glenn. Those are the top candidates. I didn't really need them to go beyond those four. Should they have maybe been a little more thorough with some of the other ones besides Vrabel? Maybe, but I didn't need I didn't need them to cast a wide net, because a lot of those guys are backup candidates for other teams. Are going to lose out on Vrabel and Johnson. When you get to the coordinators, everybody should be itching to work with Drake May. And there's so many different ways this offense could go. I'd like to see him go out and kind of hear some more ideas on how the offense could go.
I'm trying to get a better understanding of how much impact Mike Vrabel's going to have. This might be hard to answer, but
yeah,
talent is an issue.
Yeah,
we know that they're going to have to do what they got to do on that end. But if Vrabel was the coach of this past season's team, what do you think their record would have been?
So I don't think Vrabel. I think Vrabel would have been more forceful about getting more talent in. Mm-hmm. So that's where it kind of gets weird.
Okay.
Probably a couple more wins. I don't think we would have been talking playoffs or anything. I think the season's still probably over around Thanksgiving like that. But, his game management's better than Mayo's, and they lost a couple games that way. So 5 or 6 maybe is their ceiling with Vrabel as opposed to Mayo. But talent is still the chief issue.
One more question. I got so many questions. Multi-year contract. Do you have any idea what that might be?
For Vrabel?
Yes.
It's got to be 5, right?
I would think
standard.
4 or 5. Yeah, is usually the standard. Maybe there's like an option in there. I don't know, but
this is the guy. This is their guy. That's pretty obvious,
right? This is not bring in for a couple of years and see how it goes. No. And I heard you saying earlier, like you one and done 2 coaches in a row.
No, it's not going to happen.
Good luck. So no, they had to commit to him, and it would make sense that they committed to him significantly long term.
Real quick, defensive coordinator. We haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah,
Jimmy Stewart. Okay. When Jimmy Stewart starts tweeting stuff out, I generally pay attention. Stu, a few minutes ago, says, I wonder if Jim Schwartz is in play as DC or senior defensive assistant for the Patriots under new head coach Mike Vrabel. Jim Schwartz. Thoughts?
He's a fine defensive coordinator. I like the idea of Patrick Graham. He'd probably be at top of my list. It's funny. I was looking so much at defensive coordinators for Ben Johnson because it was like, who's going to be his Wade Phillips for Sean McVay? So I was going through guys like John Fox, Ron Rivera. Yeah. I would honestly try to go get like an up-and-comer to work under Vrabel.
Well, right, because, he is... I know he's done a lot. He's worked with tight ends and offensive line and, front office, but he was a DC in Houston. He's a guy from the defensive side of the ball. Defensive coordinator doesn't matter as much as offensive coordinator.
So this was one of the issues I had with Gerard Mayo's setup, and I think it's part of the reason it didn't work. You promoted Gerard Mayo in theory because of the job he did defensively, right? But he didn't work with the defense. We didn't see him like you see Bill Belichick right in the huddle with the defense. You saw D'Amico Ryans last night coaching up players on the sideline. I want this to be Mike Vrabel's defense. I want Mike Vrabel, play-to-play involved in the ins and outs of this defense. So there'll be a defensive coordinator. Maybe he doesn't outright call it. Maybe he lets somebody else calls the plays and he just kind of chips in big moments. But I want it to be his. I like the defense he runs. I like the defense they ran in Tennessee. I like the defense they ran in Houston. I think going to Cleveland this year and working more on the offensive side of the ball is very educational and very helpful from being a head coach. But you don't want him to pull too far away from why he's here, right? So Jim Schwartz could work. Honestly, I really hadn't spent a ton of time thinking about. I could do another 3,300 words on defensive coaches, I guess, because I spent all the time on that offensive side of the ball. But I'm not as concerned because I want it to be Mike Vrabel's defense. It should be Mike Vrabel's defense.
Real quick, so we had a caller call in earlier and mention possibly the Patriots tapping into coaches within the college ranks. How do you feel about that?
So I don't like it for head coaches. I'm very anti that for head coaches. It has a horrible track record. Coordinators, I don't hate it. I had a couple guys on my list. Charlie Wise Jr. was one. Mike Denbrock at Notre Dame was another. It's an interesting way to go. There's certainly an adjustment that comes with it, but I would, especially on offense, at least get some offensive coaches in and interview them. Now, Tommy Rees is kind of the best of both worlds because he was the OC at Notre Dame and Alabama for, I think, 5 or 6 years between the two, and then went to Cleveland last year, and that was really his first NFL job. So if you want that college impact, but with a guy that has experience doing it at the NFL level, like Tommy Reese is kind of the perfect balance.
Great stuff, Barth.
Thank you.
Check out your work, 985thesportshub.com.